My name is Minh Vu. I'm 52 years old. For nearly 3 decades, I worked at VietMech Systems, a manufacturing plant in Da Nang. I wasn't the manager or someone with fancy titles. I was just the guy who made sure things worked. The machines, the software, the timing, the calibrations, if something moved, buzzed, or blinked, chances are I had a hand in making sure it did so correctly. I wasn't flashy. I didn't give presentations or talk much in meetings. But when the line stopped at 2 a.m., they called me. And I showed up. Every time. I remember the day it changed. It was a Monday morning. Everyone was gathered around for one of those all-staff huddles. Standing in front of us was Tran, the new operations manager. Young, confident, fresh off her MBA from Singapore. She smiled the whole time she talked, like we were all lucky to be part of something big. We're entering a new era, she said. We're modernizing operations. Some legacy roles will become redundant. She never looked directly at me, but she didn't have to. Everyone else did. I didn't say a word. I just nodded and walked back to my station.
No argument.
No drama. What would have been the point? I opened my drawer and packed my things. My daughter's handmade mug, my scratched-up reading glasses, and my black notebook. That notebook was full of 27 years of handwritten calibration data, undocumented fixes, and custom firmware routines. My life's work. Not company property.
Mine.
No one stopped me on the way out. Not a single thank you or handshake. Just a red light on the scanner at the exit when my access badge failed. That was it. After all those years, they replaced me with consultants who didn't even know what questions to ask. I didn't leave angry. I left knowing what they didn't. Machines remember how they're treated. And soon enough, so would the people who ran them. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. 2 weeks after Minh Vu's departure, the new technical team from NeoSyntek, a consulting firm based in Singapore, began rolling out system-wide updates. They replaced Minh's firmware with a generic cloud-based platform, disabled local overrides, and installed a new dashboard that looked modern but responded with a half-second delay, enough to throw off the timing on line 3. At first, the issues were small. A conveyor on the east line paused without reason. A robotic arm misaligned by 2 millimeters. Barcode scanners failed to register parts once every 100 scans. Nothing catastrophic, yet, but the tempo of the factory had changed. The rhythm was off, like a song being played in the wrong key. Operators started noticing. They knew when a machine didn't sound quite right, when a temperature gauge climbed faster than it used to. But they didn't speak up. Not openly. Minh was gone, and with him, the trust that someone upstairs actually understood how things really worked. Instead, they exchanged glances. Quiet looks passed across the production floor. Shrugs. A muttered, "It's not the same anymore" during lunch breaks. But no formal complaints. In the office upstairs, Tran remained calm, confident. When asked about the hiccups in the system, she replied, "Every transition has turbulence. We're building toward a smarter, more efficient factory. A little pain now is the cost of long-term growth." She pointed to analytics dashboards showing optimized uptime projections and efficiency goals. To her, the numbers still looked fine. The consultants at NeoSyntek assured her it was all part of the implementation curve. She didn't see the delay at the loading dock. She didn't hear the grinding noise from the Line 7 gear motor, something Minh used to fix with a drop of oil and a half-turn of an Allen key. She didn't notice that orders were beginning to slip behind schedule, or that the QC team had started flagging more parts than usual. And even if she had, she would have said the same thing. We're transitioning to the future. But the future, it seemed, was already falling behind. 6 weeks after Minh Vu walked out of VietMech, his phone rang. It was a Thursday afternoon. He was sitting on his back porch, quietly untangling a fishing reel.
No factory noise. No alarms.
Just the distant hum of the city and the steady breath of the river below. The caller ID read, Tran. He let it ring once, twice, 3 times. Then he answered, voice calm, measured. "Hello, this is Minh." There was a pause on the other end. Then her voice, slightly rushed, slightly strained, stripped of the polished confidence she used to wear like perfume. Min, it's Annie. I hope you're doing well. He didn't say anything, just waited. We're having some trouble with the main conveyor system, she continued. Line 4, the stopping randomly, throwing error codes our team can't trace. NeoSyntek says it's a firmware miscommunication. Orders are backing up. We're missing deadlines. Still, Min said nothing. We were wondering if you might be available for a quick consult, just to help us diagnose the issue. Finally, he spoke. His tone was polite, professional, but with a firmness that left no room for misunderstanding. My consulting rate is $250 per hour, 4-hour minimum, paid in advance. I'll also need a signed contract outlining the scope of work. Silence. Then, a hesitant breath. That's considerably higher than your old rate. That's because I'm no longer an employee. Annie exhaled through her nose. I'll need to get that approved. Take your time, Min replied. But the longer line 4 is down, the more shipments you'll miss. He hung up before she could respond. By sundown, the contract was in his inbox. Signed. Approved. 2 weeks earlier, they were confident they could replace him with automation and algorithms. Now, they were paying him by the hour just to stop the bleeding. The next morning, Minh Vu returned to VietMech for the first time since his quiet exit. He signed in at the front desk, not as an employee but as a consultant. His visitor badge hung around his neck like a quiet declaration. I don't work here. I fix what you can't. The production floor had changed in his absence. New monitors blinked with bright colors and flashy charts. But something felt off. The sound of the machines was no longer steady. It pulsed with hesitation, like an engine running out of rhythm. Min walked calmly toward line 4. A cluster of NeoSyntek engineers stood huddled near the conveyor, laptops open, faces tense. When they saw Min, one of them, maybe fresh out of university, stepped forward with cautious arrogance. We've been trying to isolate the issue. We think it's a voltage spike or maybe a signal timing mismatch in the actuator module. Min didn't reply. He simply set his old laptop on a rolling cart, opened it and connected it to the control panel. Within seconds, the interface bloomed open, a familiar set of diagnostics that only he truly understood. His fingers moved without hesitation. Old command lines, custom firmware scripts, hidden calibration offsets no one else had ever documented. 32 minutes later, the conveyor jolted, then eased into motion. Smooth, steady, perfect. The engineers stared. That's it? One asked, blinking. It's fixed. Min nodded once. You were running the backup firmware. It wasn't synced to the actuator's torque mapping. But that wasn't in the NeoSyntek documentation. No, Min said simply. It wasn't. Nearby, Annie watched the line start up again. Relief washed over her face, quickly followed by something else. Uncertainty. She walked over, trying to maintain composure. Thank you, Min. That was fast. He closed his laptop, calm as ever. You're welcome. There are also issues with line 2, and the barcode readers in the assembly wing are acting strange. If you're already here, Min shook his head. That's not part of the contract. Her face tightened. Min, be reasonable. I am. I'm treating this like the business arrangement you made it. He packed his laptop and turned to leave. By the time he reached the exit, whispers had already started among the floor staff. The old guy still has it, and now everyone knew it. In the weeks that followed Min's return, the phone calls became routine. Every few days, a new issue, a new malfunction, a new system no one at NeoSyntek could decipher. Each time Annie would call, and each time Min would answer with the same calm tone and a slightly higher rate. $275 an hour, then $300, then $325. No one protested. They couldn't afford to. The machines that had once run like clockwork were falling apart under modern oversight. Shipments were late. Customers were asking questions. Warranty claims doubled. The executive team at VietMech began to notice. Then came the audit. It was supposed to be a routine internal review. But buried inside system logs and quality reports, investigators uncovered something Tran had carefully hidden. The real defect rates, far higher than what she'd reported. She'd been massaging the numbers, relying on projections from NeoSyntek's dashboard while ignoring what was actually coming off the line. She was called into a closed-door meeting and didn't return to the floor afterward. By the next morning, her nameplate was gone from the office door. Demoted, quietly but definitively. The message was clear. Numbers might impress investors, but results spoke louder. And the factory had stopped delivering results the day Min left. 2 days later, Min was invited to a meeting on the top floor. A half-dozen executives waited around a sleek conference table. Their faces looked tired, worn from weeks of scrambling to put out fires. Min stood at the head of the room, a laptop open beside him. "I can fix this," he said simply. "But putting out fires isn't enough." He tapped his screen, bringing up an interface he'd been working on in the quiet hours of the night. "This is VietMech, a unified monitoring and calibration system, built from the ground up to work with your existing equipment. Full visibility, real-time analytics, predictive maintenance, integrated alerts. And yes, it documents everything." An executive leaned forward. "And who supports it?"
Ido.
"Through my company. Exclusive license."
Ongouin Consultation.
Silence hung for a beat. Then someone asked what they all wanted to know. "Can it stabilize production?" Min didn't flinch. "It can do more than that. It can prevent this from ever happening again." They didn't debate long. The vote was unanimous. The old engineer they once called outdated was now the only one they could trust to bring the future. 3 weeks after the executives approved his proposal, Minh Vu registered his new company, VietMech Solutions. No office, no investors, just a name, a vision, and the blueprint for VietMech. But it didn't stay small for long. The first thing he did was call the old crew. Technicians he'd worked with for years, the ones who remembered how things used to run. Some had been quietly pushed aside. Others had left on their own, disillusioned by the company's direction. They came back without hesitation. Under Min's quiet leadership, VietMech grew quickly. He trained each new hire himself, not just in the technical specs, but in the philosophy that had always guided his work. Listen to the machines. Understand before you replace. Fix before you discard. Within a month, defect rates had dropped lower than they'd ever been, even during Min's full-time tenure. Customers who had started to complain began calling with compliments. Back orders were cleared, contracts renewed. The factory didn't just recover, it got better. Impressed by the turnaround, the parent company rolled out VietMech at 2 additional plants, then 3 more. Min oversaw each implementation personally. He wasn't just patching systems anymore. He was building the new standard. Meanwhile, quietly and without ceremony, Tran was officially terminated. An internal investigation had uncovered that she had been receiving unofficial consulting incentives from NeoSyntek during her time as operations manager. What started as blind faith in automation had ended in a clear conflict of interest. No press release, no warning, just a removal from the company directory. When Min heard the news, he didn't celebrate. He didn't post online. He didn't comment to his team. He simply paused for a moment in his small new office, looked out the window at the city below, and went back to work. He wasn't building for revenge. He was building for legacy. The systems they once called obsolete were now the backbone of an industrial revival, and VietMech Solutions was at the center of it all. 1 year to the day after Minh Vu had been escorted out of VietMech with a cardboard box, he stood in his new office, this time, at the top floor of a modern building overlooking the Han River. VietMech Solutions now had 15 full-time employees. Engineers, analysts, and field technicians, all handpicked, all trained in Min's way of thinking. His way of seeing machines not as cold equipment, but as systems that required respect, understanding, and care. On the wall beside his desk hung a framed blueprint, the original VietMech schematic. Below it, a quote in clean lettering: "Understand before you replace. Fix before you discard." His phone buzzed. A message from Liam, his right-hand man, and former floor supervisor. Bay 5 upgrade complete. 0 faults. All systems green.
Minh smile.
Lim had proven to be a natural leader, now overseeing VietMech's deployments at 3 separate manufacturing plants. Over the past 6 months, VietLogic had expanded across every VietMech-owned facility. Downtime was down 60%. Warranty claims had dropped by nearly half. The once quiet engineer was now the essential cornerstone of an industrial renaissance. He'd even been invited to keynote the upcoming Vietnam Tech and Automation Conference. On the very panel Tran once headlined, Minh hadn't decided whether he would attend. Public speaking was never his strength. But part of him wanted to stand on that stage, not to boast, but to tell others like him, you are not obsolete. You are the foundation they forgot they needed. That morning, he received an unexpected visitor. Harold Din, the retired founder of VietMech, arrived at VietMech's office. They sat together in Minh's new conference room, no longer as boss and employee, but as 2 men who had built something that lasted. I'm considering buying the company back, Harold said. But this time I want to do it right. Keep the heart. Keep the quality. I want your guidance.
Minh nodded slowly.
Then we don't start with machines. We start with people. As Harold left, Minh walked to the window. Below, the city moved forward, faster, noisier, more digital. But his systems still beat steadily beneath it all. Not because they were the newest, but because they were built to endure. His daughter, now an engineer herself, had once said at her graduation, "Dad, you didn't just take lemons and make lemonade. You built a whole factory to bottle it." And she was right. Minh didn't burn bridges. He built new ones, wider, stronger, and this time on his terms. Sometimes the best revenge isn't showing them you were right. It's becoming someone they never imagined you could be. Not a worker, not a number, but the name they call when nothing else works.